Good evening, good morning, viewers. Good morning to everyone who is listening to this podcast. Today you are with DJ Gentroos, the man and the beast, the man who loves music, the man who rocks everything. Today I'll be discussing economics, business, the current affairs. Stay tuned and get more information on what's happening and what's cooking. So basically today will be giving a brief summary of the three biggest economies. We look at the statistics, the economics around it, and everything, and how their economy work. So today we'll look at because there's trade barriers now with the tensions going on and around the world. So it's best to look at the economies, how they structured, and the statistics to give you a perspective on what to expect and how to work around where in any country you are at, usually in business or in finance. We say those leaders influence the market and how the market is structured. So when we be looking at the three biggest economies, break it down with the statistics and the numbers to give you an overview on what to expect. When we look at the GDP, we'll start with the GDP. So the three biggest economies, both in emerging and the developed countries, is the USA, it's the Chinese economy, and the Indian economy. The US is leading with the GDP at around $30 trillion. Chinese is $19.4 trillion. Then we look at the Indian economy, that's sitting at $4.4 trillion. However, when we look at these GDP figures, we have to also consider the debt rates and how the margins between the debts and the payments. So when we look at the GDP of the US, the debt level is above the GDP, which is at 38 trillion, while the GDP is sitting at around 30. So they have more debt on their side. With the global economy, it can be global uncertainty, it can grow to a larger scale. And then we'll take a look at the Chinese economy. When you look at the Chinese economy, the debt rate is quite low. The GDP is at 19.4 trillion. The gross domestic product, which is the products produced in the country for a certain period of time. Then when you look at the debt level for Chinese, it's sitting at around 4 trillion. So it's lower than their GDP. So they have their balance sheet is in good terms compared to the US. US borrows more than what they make. When you look at India is sitting at it's almost close to 50% of the balance. The trade balance of is at almost 50%, because their GDP is at 4 trillion and they are sitting on like 2.2 trillion for debt, so they can pay off the debt quickly. And then when we look at the GDP growth rates for 2025, the end of 2025, US was sitting at around 3%, which is a drastic growth. The Chinese was sitting at around 1%, and the Indian was growing at a rapid rate. It was sitting at 8%. Indian will be taking over. Then we look at the GDP per capita. GDP per capita measures what an individual in the country. It's the GDP is measured based on the population, what an individual in the population generally can earn. So it's called the GDP per capita, which is the US is leading, and then the Chinese, and then the Indian. So the US economy is still stable in that form, that most people are working, and the income with the GDP it's still in line. And then when you look at the forecast with this forecast, they will change drastically because of this a lot of uncertainty in the global economy. With US was predicted to be at 2%, and the Chinese were predicted to be at 4%, around 4%, and the Indian was predicted around 6.2%. So I don't know, this might change with the global tension and things and supply chain disruptions and the oil prices going up and the inflation, cost of living going up. And then when you look at the inflation rates of the US, is a stable 3%, and then the Chinese inflation is around 0.7%, which is quite low. Usually the book economics, the benchmark, usually they'll suggest that the inflation sits around 3 to 6%, so that you can control. However, Chinese is a bigger economy. They make their money through production, so it's better for them. Probably they have a different economic thinking from the usual economic thinking that we are used to in economics 101. And then the inflation is the same as the Indian inflation, which is Indian is sitting at 0.7. Also, probably they have the same things because of the technological outlook and how things are working around. Then when you look at the interest rate is generally at 3% for both large economies, which is the Chinese and the US economy. If the interest rates are stable, meaning the currencies are stable. However, due to the uncertainty and global trade and war and disruptions, this might change drastically, and this will have a large influence in how we observe the economy going forward. And then we look at the population. I've already spoke about the GDP per capita. It accounts for the population. So the population of US is sitting at around 34 million, and then the population of Chinese is at billion and around billions, and then the population of India is in billions. So this and basically in economics we say the larger the population, the greater the overview of the future, because of you have more labor force, you have more people coming in, and also you have to account the age groups of those people who are they still young. If they're still young, they can still produce, they can be innovative and come up with new. So, and then with the larger population, this gives business people, economies scaling, because generally in the economy, the business role generally in the economy, 10% of the population is usually high earners or wealthy people. So you first target those, then you work down, getting the working class, and then you have a market of consumers. So basically the economy will always be running. Of course, we have to consider innovation, building business, production. In recent years, production has moved from the general production to AI, influence of AI being involved in production and creating of jobs. And however, it's at this lower scale, but with time it will grow. As you see, the Indian economy is doing well because of the tech. When we look at the island economy is doing well because of the technology and the tech hubs and the activities are happening around the economy. When you look at the US, you look at Tesla, you look at Facebook, you look at ChatGPT, all those are tech businesses in China. Look at me. And then now there's data centers coming up, which is another economy on its own, because it takes a lot of energy to build data centers. I know in some of the countries have started already because there's big data, and with data you can come up with insights. The insights decides on how you approach the economy, you approach business, you approach your everyday life, and then it helps you to shape your outlook as an individual. And then when you look at the unemployment rates, this is really, really, really important. With the high population, you cannot have a high unemployment rates. So when you look at the figures here for 2025, this is basically the figures for 2025. When you look at the unemployment rate for the US, is sitting at around 4.2%. The Chinese is sitting at 5.9%. Then there is Indian sitting at 4.7%. Basically, the unemployment rate measures everyone in the economy and who is willing to work, who is not and is active in the labor force, but not getting employment. However, as economists and business people, we want it to be a perfect unemployment. However, it's in reality will never happen where the employment is at perfect as 0%. However, we want to keep it as low as possible, accounting for the Gini coefficient, which Gini coefficient accounts for in the inequality between the rich and the poor in a country, in a country. And then the budget, the defense budget, the trade wars happening. But when you look at the GDP, you look at the budget, we see that the US invests more on the budget of defense. It's sitting at around 900 billion. And then we look at Chinese, it's sitting at around 250 billion. And then we look at the Indian defense is sitting at around 75 billion. So US is leading again with defense budget because you have to protect your jurisdiction, as the law student used to say. And then what I will say again, the debt levels, I have spoken about the debt levels. And then in general, looking at the outlook, this is what I can give you with the 3 economic powers and how to work around them, because of they determine how the markets will move. And if you're a trader, if you're a business person, if you're a general worker, if you work in any industry, you have to be aware of the global economy, how it's structured, because it will give you a broader perspective on how to plan and how to navigate your things going forward. Today it's my first episode. I hope you subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's your boy DJ Gentroos, the main man, your economist, your business guy. If you need advice, consultation, you need assistance based on economics, business, on what to look out for, these are the indicators. I'll also be providing indicators going forward. Please like and subscribe on my channel, and thank you for listening, and thank you for being part of the team. Thank you so much.